Mandela's memorial. Am I using the wrong word calling him a translator? You decide for yourself. The man is now defending his performance despite criticism from around the world that he was faking the whole time. He tells a radio station he is perfectly qualified, actually qualified, and adding that he is getting treatment for schizophrenia. So the question, is he sick and that's what happened with his interpreting, or is he a fraud? But for now, what was he even trying to say? That's what we're trying to figure out here. We're going to bring in John Wolf Nelson. He is an RID certified American Sign Language interpreter and a consultant with SignTalk. And I want to start, first of all, thank you for doing this. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Good morning.
Let's start with a little bit of sound of what was being said and what was being done at the same time. Can we play that?
Men, women, and children must live side by side, dreaming the same dream, realizing at the crucible of time in our land. We salute you.
Okay, now, obviously you have one of the grandchildren there speaking in English. It's being translated into South African, we believe. What's your general impression of what you saw or didn't see?
Well, what we see is a person gesticulating rhythmically. They seem to be actually creating some sentences. You see him pausing. It looks like he's thinking about what the next parts of his interpretation would be.
But do you recognize any of this as sign language?
Sign language.
No, sign language.
I'm not a linguist, and I do not know South African Sign Language, but this does not look like sign language.
So if you don't know South African Sign Language, why is this still instructive of being wrong to you?
Well, we can see here that he's not using any facial expression.
So here, let's stop here for a second. So you're saying the face itself is too stoic.
Exactly.
Because what are you supposed to do?
Well, any interpreter, any person who uses any sign language is going to use their face and body to convey the intent, the emotion.
That's part of the training. It's not just style. You're supposed to do it.
Absolutely, and that's the important aspect. We are trained.
Mm-hmm. And the hands, you said that you kept seeing like a rhythmic, here, I'll make it so it looks like a better John Madden-esque illustration. You're saying that you're seeing a pattern, but to you that could be more dance moves than it could be actual sign language.
They look like gestures, and they're repetitive.
So this is him doing his thing. Now, we want to also show him, let's go to the next clip, because I want to show him, okay, so let's say not understanding South African vernacular and translating is relevant. This woman is also doing South African. And she's doing the same type of translation that he is. And if you watch, you know, I'm no trained translator, but it seems like they're doing very different things. What do you pick up here, John?
Very different. Again, interpretations will vary from interpreter to interpreter because of the lens they bring to the job and how they choose to represent the message. This woman is actually creating phrases. It looks like she's using actual language. This is not.
Right? Okay, so just to be clear about it, your best guess, is this man a trained translator?
No, absolutely not.
And so he doesn't really know what he's doing. Schizophrenia, you're not a psychologist, I understand, but if that were the cause, when we looked at an earlier example of him translating, we noted the same types of traits. Have you ever heard of anybody having some type of breakdown that destroyed their ability to translate?
I have not. If the person knew sign language, one would assume that regardless of their mental state, they would actually still be able to create language for themselves. This is not sign language.
I mean, obviously, I don't mean to block here, but they seem to be doing very different things in frequency, in direction of their hands, and in mimicking what is being said by the actual speaker.
Absolutely.
And the face is very active. Their expressions being done seems as though she is, you know, using oral references to language.
Yes,
as well.
Absolutely. She's mouthing some of the words, and she's using her face to indicate what she's expressing, the intention and the spirit of the speaker as well. This gentleman is not.
Now, what is the chance that you could get away with this in the United States, where you could do what he's doing and somebody wouldn't seem to know right away?
Unfortunately, you'd be surprised. We actually see in our field a large number of people who may take a few sign language classes, know a little bit of sign language, purport themselves to be a sign language interpreter, and actually go into the field and earn money portraying sign language interpreting without actually knowing what they're doing, being trained or being certified.
How?
That's a good question. At SignTalk, all interpreters are vetted for their credentials. They are screened and personally interviewed. It's a good question. We do a lot of writing and talking about the rights of disabled people in the United States, but when we take that from paper into action every day in the field, there's a big disconnect.
So I guess really we're waiting for people. Obviously, I don't understand sign language, so I can't judge it. So you're waiting for people who are deaf to basically come forward and say, hey, that person was way off. And if you don't have that urgency and you don't have that setup where people are comfortable coming forward and there's a mechanism to complain, you may not know.
That's true, but better on the front end, include deaf people in the conversation about hiring interpreters. We often at the rights, how to give people access to language and information, but we don't include them when we take their rights from paper into real life everyday action.
So just to be clear, unless we learn something about the psychology of this, the illness of it, that changes our analysis, is this man a real translator?
In my opinion, no.
And it's not about the language barrier, because you have another example right here, and she is demonstrating things you would recognize as translating.
Absolutely. And also, as stated by Bruno Drucken, who is the national director of the Deaf Federation of South Africa, this person is not known to the South African deaf community. Had they included those people in the conversation when preparing such a memorial event, they would have known that.
Because as we keep saying, the real harm here isn't so much about him, it's about all the people who were hearing impaired that didn't get to appreciate what was said that day.
It's about a gentleman who stole the voice of one of the greatest activists of our time. He silenced his voice because he decided to do a fraudulent thing and cut off access to deaf people all over the world to the messages that were being delivered on this historic day.
Well said. John, thank you very much for joining us.
Good